Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for this Launch and Learn about Sony's Crystal LED session. With us is Jason Metcalf. Jason is the business manager for LED production products for Sony Electronics. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Tim. Nice to be here. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. I'm very excited about this because a big fan of DirectView LED and Sony's Crystal LED. So we're going to talk about that. Before we get to that, a couple things that I want you to know about this interface that you may or may not have joined with us before. This space allows you to network with everybody. You can ask questions over there on the right hand side. Jason will answer your questions. I will forward them to Jason. He will be the one answering the questions. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you're going to find the networking section. This is just like a trade show floor. You can interact with people. You can network with folks. All sorts of things, trade information. There's also going to be polls about this thing. We'll be posting. Let us know what you think. So take that and kind of use this as a mini virtual trade show floor, a mini virtual trade show session. So Jason, one of the things I want to start with, and it's kind of like level setting here. Explain, if folks aren't familiar, what exactly is the Crystal LED when it comes to Sony. What exactly are we talking about when we say Sony's Crystal LED?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. It's a common question. So Sony's actually been in the DirectView LED business for about 7 or 8 years now, which is a little longer than most people know. And we've really shown off these technologies for a long time. Crystal LED at a very basic level is our product name or a product category for our DirectView LED products. But it also speaks to the philosophy that we have behind these products, which is a focus on image quality, clarity, accurate representation of imagery. And this is really what has distinguished us in this market from other products. It's a high performance display first, and with other applications that come with that.
So you mentioned image quality and clarity. How, without giving me secrets and technical things that I don't understand, how exactly do you get that image clarity and that quality?
It comes from our background in image processing and video technology. So we want to maintain as much as possible a closed ecosystem, control over the product, and that's why for our BH and CH series, which is our wall mount products, it's a Sony controller that drives the display, and it gives us the ability to maintain the video pipeline, to put our own IP into the controller, which we really wouldn't be able to do with third-party products. And it has, to your point, it has enabled us to maintain that picture quality, representation, and it is much more capable than we would be able to do integrating with, maybe a third-party controller, which we're not opposed to. We've done that on our other family of products, Crystal LED Verona, for different reasons, but for BH and CH series, that's really where we want to focus.
When you look at the market, and certainly there are competitors out there that compete directly with Sony Crystal LED. Why does Crystal LED matter in this market?
Yeah, it's become a crowded field, as everyone has seen, and a rapidly evolving market, especially over the past just few years. But I think that what we've really been able to do, and what our channel partners, what our customers have really recognized, is that we're creating a very unique position for this product, which is, like I said, focus on performance, image quality. It's a continuous exercise to bring that to an achievable level. I think we're really working on this, the affordability side of the product quite a bit, but it's a price point and a quality that is for a specific purpose. People are doing things, organizations are using the product in ways that you can't really do with other DirectView LED products, like color correcting film and TV shows on it, using it for really high performance visualization and simulation activity. And it's just not something that others are really able to do. And so that's where we're trying to maintain that position, distinguish ourselves as much as possible in that space.
You mentioned the term performance, and I am curious when it comes to displays and specifically, crystal LED. What does performance mean in this market?
Performance means that the image on the display is as accurate as possible to the source material. And when you're mastering a feature film or a TV show, you need to know that what you're looking at on a workstation, on a editor station, is what's being displayed on the screen. And I think there's so much there is so much minute detail that people don't really realize until they start really digging into a display performance, that is lost a lot of times because of compression, because of limitations in bandwidth. And so that's what we want to focus on. Like our line of master monitors, we want our scalable direct view solutions to reflect that level of picture performance.
Yeah. You mentioned television and movies and color correction and using crystal LED in those applications. I want to get into the other applications, and we can certainly start with television and movies if you want. But when you look at the crystal LED, where are you seeing this being used the most?
Yeah. Of course, like other LED products, general kind of corporate education spaces, especially in, high, high impact spaces, or, executive boardroom areas, places where a company wants to show off their stature, put their best face forward. That's where they're implementing our products. And that has been pretty consistent across, many different markets. Outside of that space, there's visualization, simulation spaces for both research and private institutions. We talked about, film and TV really in the post-production space,
Okay.
and with our new Verona line in production areas as well. And then a market we've seen grow quite a bit over the past few years is high-end residential. We're doing quite a few installations for those customers as well.
I want to talk about something here because you've got different use cases here, and so when you look at those different verticals, what are the different needs? And we can go one by one, or you can just kind of generalize here. But what are the different needs that each of them have when it comes to the specifications that crystal LED brings, or the benefits that crystal LED brings?
Yeah, I think the use cases, maybe the application is different across these spaces, of course. But at the end of the day, what they want is to know that, what they want to show on the display is as close to the source as possible. Like I said, so in a corporate space, a brand wants to represent their own look as much as possible. Many times they're using it as a sales tool, so they want their customers to see their brand in the best light. In a simulation or visualization space, they're looking at models, they're looking at maybe in collaborative design centers, they're looking at a vehicle. Again, they want to know that color is as accurate as possible, that they can see really fine detail. It goes down the line. So it's a high impact display first, but really, where we've seen a lot of traction, where we've differentiated ourselves, is a really high performance tool for all sorts of different applications.
When you look at those different applications, walk me through like the customer, and we'll differentiate here between, let's say, a high impact space for a corporate client and a production space. What are some of the considerations that they are going through when they finally say, you know what, Sony Crystal LED is the direction we need to go? What, is it that image quality? Is it that color matching, or is there a kind of a longer term consideration when it comes to, not just those color matching and the image quality, but it's also the 100 years ago when I was in education, it was the total cost of ownership of displays, right? It was not just, oh, the list price of this display. It was the support. It was the long term or the life of the actual product.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So with this market really maturing, it seems crazy to say that after, it's only been less than a decade, probably we've had these products in the
Time
market, but
flies, Jason.
time flies, and especially today, things are changing rapidly. But it really has become, I think, is really starting to mature. And when we're getting to that point in space, people are looking at TCO. They've implemented products in the past that they're not happy with, and that they learned, unfortunately, that they may put in a less expensive product today, but a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, there are, there's unforeseen costs that go along with that, including in a lot of cases, dismantling and replacing that display before it has reached maturity, with a new product. So that's really what we are working on, conveying more clearly, which we're not always great at that storytelling, but with kind of the premium aspects of the display come those TCO aspects as well. So we have really unique ways to do calibration on site. It's a low cost procedure. It's rapid. So they'll do that at install, but then as a maintenance service, along the life, 12 months, 18 months later, to make sure that the display looks like it did on day one. I think what happens a lot of times is you go to a trade show, you get Infocom or NAB's coming up, you see all these displays and they look fantastic.
Yep.
Because people spent 24 hours before that fine-tuning every single detail, making sure it looked great for those 5 days of the show. But afterward, when they do the installation, 30 days later, 60 days later, it color shifts, the display physically shifts, and you really start to lose that quality. So that's where we focused on making sure that, that day one quality is maintained through the entire life of the display. And I think we have an incredible group of customers that would back us up on that.
You've mentioned a couple of the parts in TCO, total cost of ownership. What are some of the other aspects of total cost of ownership that customers need to be aware of when they are considering a direct view LED purchase? Because you're right, this is not, number one, this is not I'm going to go to a big box store and just pick one of these up. It is not an impulse buy, right? There's a lot of considerations here. What are some of those considerations that organizations need to be aware of as they're going through this process and as they're educating themselves?
Yeah, I mean, and these are details that come with, people being more familiar with LED, with direct view LED, the market maturing, right? Things like the quality of the power supply, which seems maybe not the most interesting topic in the world, but we're not only using a more efficient design, which reduces power, which within the LED world reduces power, reduces heat, reduces wear on the components, and now you're prolonging the life of those components, and you're seeing less shift in color. But the power supply itself being more robust, more reliable, leads to lower failure rates, leads to lower issues with all of those components that are powered by that supply. So it's those things that not always the best on a marketing piece, but do end up being real value back to the user. So those kind of component choices, the way that we're designing the display, the physical design, and then being able to offer services to maintain it. Those are all part of our TCO offering.
Another total cost of ownership, and you just mentioned it there, sort of serendipitously, is the power consumption, right? And when you look at direct view LED in just generically that market compared to other displays, talk for a second about the long-term life term impact on power consumption for an organization by going down a crystal LED route.
Yeah, it adds up. Like we've talked about, these are long life products. I think most everyone uses a similar 100,000 hour spec, to half brightness for a diode, right? So that means even at 24-hour operation, you're going to be running this display 9 years, something like that. And any percentage saving in power will add up over that time. So we're about a 30% reduced power use from an industry average. But these are based on our very conservative measurements as well. I think what is the easiest way to kind of get a gauge for this is to go around that trade show, stand close to any of these displays, and just feel the like sauna like heat coming off of them. That's going into your space. You're going to have to condition that air. That air, has to circulate through the space. So it really does add up over time. It's not just a pure electricity cost saving. It impacts every aspect of the display choice.
Well, and you mentioned something there, is because not just the aspect of the power consumption, and you're right. There are some LEDs, and we've all felt them because we've all gone by trade show booths, where you can if you're going to a trade show and it's rather chilly outside, you can absolutely warm up rather quickly by going some of these display manufacturers. But it's the other aspect. It is not just the power consumption, which is certainly one of them, but it is also the quite frankly the measurement of saying, okay, not only is it the power consumption, which directly impacts the power bill that an organization is going to have to pay on a monthly basis. You mentioned the fact that Sony Crystal LED is 30% less than that, but it's also the HVAC cost involved as well. And that's one of those aspects. Again, when I was a tech manager in education, I had to learn that the hard way. We put a brand new nursing facility at our college, and that was one of the conversations was, okay, X, Y, and Z, that's fine. How much is it going to cost now to cool this rack room, or is it going to cool this common area that we happen to be putting in a large display? How do you get the customers, and it might be working with the dealer, it might be working with Sony, but how do you educate them on kind of these ancillary costs that do add up?
Yeah, like we've seen, direct LED is coming in to replace things like projectors, right? 150-inch displays, where they didn't have to have added cooling, added conditioning added to that space because of the projector. But now you put in a display, it may be 10,000 watts or something like that, max power. You have to start thinking about that. And with a retrofit situation, I think, as sometimes that's not possible. You can't just come in and add more ventilation in the space without increasing your budget, doing renovation. It's a big impact on an organization. And so that's why, we really feel like it's not every time, but in a lot of cases, we are able to put the display in. They may not need additional cooling, or they may just need to adjust how they're conditioning that space already. And that's sufficient. So these kind of choices, they have an impact, to your point, all the way down, the line of users and as part of the organization. So that's why we're really thinking about this, all the time with our product design.
All right. A reminder, you can ask questions to Jason. You can ask questions to me, but I won't have a very good answer. On the right-hand side, we'll get to those here in a few seconds. Jason, we've kind of touched on this a bit with the temperature. Sony has something called real-time temperature monitoring. What is that?
Yeah, so in each LED module, we actually have a temperature sensor built in. And what that is doing is it's reading the heat that is being generated in the display. Like every display, it kind of heats up over time. And as very basically, as a diode heats up, it changes somewhat in the physical properties. Color might change, viewing angle might change a little bit. And so we're reading those temperatures back, and we're making adjustments to the calibration of the display in real time as that happens. So, like I said, a lot of times you'll see a display look great day one, but over time it kind of heats up, wears out in certain places, and you start to get patches where the white doesn't look white anymore, uniformity is off. And so this is just one thing we're doing to maintain that, total total quality over time.
So if I'm a customer and I have a Sony Crystal LED in my space, how do I get that information? How do I, how can I see that, the real time monitoring? I guess is the best way to put that.
Yeah, so we have an interface in our controller software that
Okay.
will show you a heat map of the display. It's great too for troubleshooting. If you're having issues with heat or overheating, it can show you exactly where on the display that may be occurring. But then all that data is part of our API set, and that can be integrated with any external monitoring tool or control tool as well.
How important that's one of those things is the APIs in general, and Sony does a really good job of interfacing with everything from ServiceNow on on down. How important has that been from a customer service standpoint to be able to get the information from a Crystal LED into a unified space? Single pane of glass is the kind of the generic term, but that is that getting all that information into one location for the IT and the AV managers.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense, but as we've seen the market change, people want the display to be like it is, a display, not require a unique piece of software or special training. They want to use it like they use any other flat panel or projector. And so being able to have that API set available, integrate directly with Crestron or QSys or whatever other control system you're using is it's not only important, it's required from most projects, right? And that's where we I think we've done a great job of maintaining that documentation.
Well, it's been interesting. You said required, because I would agree with that, right? Where if you do not have the ability to bring in that information into secondary or third party views, I think that you certainly bring do yourself a disservice, and you're kind of discounted at that point. When you are talking to clients and you do site surveys, you've got case studies where you've been able to come in and do not only really nice displays and really nice installations, but also on the back end and helping those clients understand, again, back to the total cost of ownership, but also the ability to monitor. When you're looking at those case studies, and you guys can come back and go, okay, this is a really cool, application here. When you're looking at that, um, how much of a concern? Well, there goes my video. Hang on. How much of a concern is that API?
It absolutely is, right? And not just the availability of it, but knowing that you're going to maintain it, you're going to implement new features, uh, in a timely fashion. And so it's not just having the API set or understanding how to do it. It's partnership with those entities as well. We have a great partnership with both, Crestron and QSC. When we do have issues where a control system's not working or there's some issue, we're troubleshooting that with them directly. And it's definitely led to a couple of cases where an end user, we was, saved from complication due to that maintenance and that relationship.
Very good. That was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Never a dull moment when you're doing
Monday.
stuff live.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so take a look at we've mentioned total cost of ownership a couple of times, and kind of the energy consumption, as well as the maintenance and stuff like that. I want to go through, though, the installation process, but also the longevity of the process. So first and foremost, simple question, but how easy is this to install?
It is easy and getting easier. I think what we have really tried to do more than anything is maintain parity to what the installer expects in the space. We know that there's the teams that come in and do the installation, the integration for display. They're not always experts in the product, so we are trying to make that as familiar to them as possible. I think this is just sort of a practical fact of life. And so we have done things like reduce the components or where the components are laid out in the cabinet to make serviceability easier. We have combined more and more of the modules that make up the display surface so that it's, one set of 6 modules now that you're installing rather than 6 individual ones. And that enables us to physically align those modules in the factory and much more accurately than typically is done in the field. And then, I mentioned our calibration process, right? There's integrations that we've done to make the service of the display easier. So with that process, you can use it's actually a Sony Alpha camera, mirrorless camera, that you can point at the display. It integrates directly into the controller, and then there's a program that runs automatically, looks at the display, does adjustments to the physical, the electronic seam correction, the physical seam issues, does that calibration pass, all of that automatically in a pretty quick fashion. So, we want these to be as easy to implement as possible, obviously, because they're happening more and more. There's costs associated with that. We want to make it simple. So,
well, that was actually going to be my next question: is why does the ease of installation matter? It's not just time on site, but it's also again, we're going to, the name of this webinar should probably be total cost of ownership, but that does also add to the bottom line that the dealer needs to to account for and ultimately charge the client. So talk for a second about the real world impact, the dollar impact of making it as quick and easy to put up as possible.
Yeah, there's some applications where you really want a specialized installer to come in and make sure things are, as perfect as they can be. And that's what we do in critical viewing spaces and those kind of things. But that's not every project. And to your point, it costs more to do that. And so if we can make that install simpler, more familiar, a SI or an external installation team that can come in, they can bring a team that they're familiar with or comfortable with, and they can do that installation without having to bring in a specialized installer or something like that. So I think that's a really direct way that it happens. Then, like we're talking about, any maintenance that has to happen, any changes down the product line, you're just going to add time and complexity if that process is difficult in the future. So we're trying to make it easy.
All right. You at the beginning of this, you mentioned the Sony controller, and you made a very good point. The Sony Crystal LED will work with other controllers. However, you did mention something there when you bring in a Sony Alpha camera that integrates with the Sony controller, and it makes installation a little bit easier. Talk about the benefits of, as you're going through this process. And again, this is not you just go back down to the store and pick up a direct view LED. This is a process. Talk about the controller and the importance of having a Sony controller married to a Sony Crystal LED.
Yeah, the LED controller is as critical a component as any other, right, in this process. That's what's doing, a lot of times what doing is what is controlling your image processing. It's doing, obviously the controlling the transfer of video out to the display. And in a, let's say it like in a third-party controller, all that has to be kind of generalized to some extent, because many different manufacturers have to integrate with it, and they have to optimize their product to that controller's ecosystem. And in some cases, that's great. And, like I said, we've done that with Verona, which is our production-focused LED model, because that space, people expect to use familiar controllers. They're maybe traveling around from city to city or something like that, or have teams coming in. They need to know that interface and that feature set, and that's great. But with the fixed install side, what we're able to do using our own controller is we're able to implement really proprietary technologies in image processing using our own processor that lives in the controller, in the way that video is transferred between the controller and the display, which is a lot of times in other controllers, there's a very basic kind of IP video scheme.
Yep.
In this one, it's much larger, much wider bandwidth, So you're able to transfer more data, and then just by that fact, the image quality improves. So it's things like that, and then being able to control both the display cabinets and the controller, that entire kind of product ecosystem, looking at it as a system, is is a benefit for us that we think ends up being passed on to the end result as well.
And when you're looking at that, and you're looking at the different features and benefits from a controller being connected to that, how did that also go back to that total cost of ownership when it comes to not only just setup, but also day-to-day use of the product?
I guess, first, from serviceability, we immediately know what is driving that controller or what's driving that display. We know basically what components are involved in it. And so they can very quickly troubleshoot, this is where an issue is happening, or this is what you're trying to do, this is how you do it, rather than having to get a bunch of different entities involved to troubleshoot the same issue. I think we've all been there. We know how fun that can be. But yeah, it's that, and then it's also being able to get back reporting from the display through the controller in a much more seamless way.
Very cool. Jason, we talked briefly about NAB and Infocom coming up. When you look at this space and you look at this marriage between, and really quickly, NAB, National Association of Broadcasters, traditionally a broadcast and, let's say, live events centric space. Infocom coming up, certainly more installed focus. But those two areas are kind of overlapping, and Sony, I think, Crystal LED is in the heart of that, because, as you mentioned, you've got TV and film production folks using this, as well as fixed installations when it comes to high profile spaces. How did a product like this kind of go between those two different, what has in the past been disparate markets, but as the years have kind of gone on, those two markets are somehow merging and kind of overlapping? How does Sony Crystal LED fit into both of those areas?
Yeah, it's two markets that are overlapping more and more, but yet have two very distinct use cases and needs across them. A live broadcast studio or a virtual production stage has a almost polar opposite need than a fixed installation in a corporate headquarters or even a simulation environment. We're definitely trying to implement features with both. We're trying to distinguish, I kind of mentioned, we have two kind of separate product lines for LED. Our fixed install side, we're focusing on things like API sets, integration with control platforms, serviceability, definitely a little more, TCO focused. On the production side, it is about maximizing performance and integrating it with other products like, our camera systems or switcher systems. So it's still, I think, into the foreseeable future, they're both going to require their own special needs in both cases. But I think what we're doing is the philosophy behind the product, performance, image quality, TCO, it's something that both spaces really respond to. So we're going to show products in a very different way in both shows. But at the end of the day, we're telling kind of the same story between both of them.
Here's an interesting question here, because I want to get your 2 cents on this. Let's take a corporate client who also has some broadcast facilities, because there's a lot of corporate clients who are rolling up and deploying their own production facilities. What is the benefit of saying, okay, you know what, we've done our homework, we've done the research, we are going down the Sony Crystal LED road for both, right? We're going to have them in our production facilities, but we're also going to have them in these high profile areas. What is the benefit of standardizing on Sony Crystal LED for a direct view LED deployment, regardless of which side they're needing? They need both, right? They need both broadcast and fixed installation. So they're going to do Sony Crystal LED for both. What is the benefit there of standardizing?
I think first and foremost, like we've been talking about, it's reliability. I mean, both of those spaces need they need a reliable product, and those things like choices of components, the attention we put into the development of the product, those carry across all of our products, really, but definitely across all of our LED products. So that's something they can kind of count on: familiarity with the product line, familiarity with the company. A lot of times they have other Sony products at least somewhere in their facility, right? And so that is definitely a benefit. I think that Sony is reliable in the sense of it being, it has been around for a long time and will continue to be around into the future. That brand recognition is important, and that brand familiarity and trust that I feel like we've built up with our customers is really important. Beyond that, I think that if we're able to offer what is being needed in both of those spaces, we continue to add new features, we continue to develop the product to be a better fit for both of them as well. And so I think that that's what our customers have seen over over the life, and we have some going back 6, 7, 8 years now that are continuing to reinvest in this technology because it's been a good experience for them.
All right, very good. Again, you can ask questions to Jason on the right-hand side. We'll get to him in a second. Jason, really quickly, if somebody's interested in getting information about Sony Crystal LED, where can they find it? Where can they take a look at it? You and I will both be at NAB. You guys will be at Infocom. We'll both be at Infocom. But where can people get their hands on, not hands on it, but get a real world, look at this?
Yeah. So I mean, the quick one is if you go to pro.sony/CLED, CLED, it'll take you to our landing page for this product. It'll have all sorts of information, documentation on it. It'll have ways for you to get in touch with our team to see it. And then in most major markets, we have some kind of demo center or, even a customer site in some cases that we can go visit. Like any display technology, seeing is believing. So I can stand up here and talk as much as I want. I can send you collateral, but ultimately it's about seeing the display, proving it out. We will bring it to a customer to make sure it works with their system, or that it is, going to support what they want to do with it. And then, like you said, trade shows, events, we try to get it around as much as possible. So I think there should be, ample opportunities to see it in person.
You mentioned bringing it to customers. How does that process work exactly?
It depends on the need. So
Okay.
we have preset demo kits that we can ship around. We have done longer term evaluations in the right case, especially with production. We'll bring out a relatively small system for them to do a proof of concept on. So it can vary.
So walk me through that process, because if I'm a customer watching this and I'm like, I think I want this, but this is this is the situation.
Yeah.
How do I ask for a Crystal LED to be brought to my space?
Yeah, if you don't already, that website, pro.sony/CLED, you can get in touch with one of our account managers or myself, and that's probably the first step, is to have that conversation, understand the use case, and then we can set it up. So.
All right, very cool. Jason, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Well, in a couple of days, I'll see you over at NAB, but also at Infocom. Again, pro.sony.cled. We're also going to have another one of these discussions with Sony, only this time around. It'll happen May 6th. It will be on Sony's Bravia line. Will not be Jason. It will be somebody else talking about the Sony Bravia. But I appreciate your time, Jason. Again, pro.sony.cled for Crystal LED. And I appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.